1 week into going vegan as a T1D, my insulin to carb ratio jumped from 1 unit for every 10 grams of carbs to 1 unit for every 30 grams. Overall, it was a 70% drop in my total daily insulin needs while eating more carbs than ever before, which sounds like a miracle, right? Except that miracle ended with my fastest crash in years, complete with the CGM arrows diving down, shaky hands, nausea, and an ambulance on standby. I'd increased my insulin sensitivity so quickly, I didn't know how to adjust. And it nearly caused a disaster on a Hollywood set for a famous music video that I was in. Before I tell you how it happened though, and how I fixed it, let me show you the exact numbers that shocked me and the science behind them. Because what I'm about to show you works for any diet, not just vegan, and it's probably not what you've been told. If you don't know who I am, my name is Matt Vanc. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm also a certified master fitness trainer and nutritionist. I'm a best-selling author and Ironman athlete. And this video chronicles what 3 months of low-fat, whole food, plant-based eating did to my blood sugars and what it taught me about insulin, stability, and real nutrition. This one shift in my diet flipped a switch in my body. The exact same science that can also work for keto, paleo, or even pizza. And before we get to the solution here, I should note that while I'm no longer vegan, what I'm about to share with you is exactly what led me to figuring out the formula that works for any diet as a type 1 diabetic, one that gives my private clients and I flexibility to eat what we want while maintaining nearly non-diabetic numbers. That sounds exciting, right? And I promise you, we will get there. But before I went vegan, numbers first, okay? So 1 unit of insulin covered 10 grams of carbs, right? While on strict vegan protocol, as I mentioned, low fat, whole food, plant-based, 1 unit for every 30 grams. That's a 3-fold jump in insulin sensitivity. Total daily insulin, as I mentioned, was down by 70%. That's crazy, right? And here's the thing. I wasn't even an Ironman athlete yet. I wasn't chasing podiums. I was desperate for control, right? And I'll be honest, I didn't want to go vegan. It didn't sound fun for me personally, right? I thought it would be super restrictive, bland, and honestly miserable, right? But after years of unpredictable highs and exhausting lows, along with a near-death experience in Paris, France, while I was working as a model, in a past life, okay, I'm a dad now, cool your jets. I was ready to try anything though. This near-death experience showed me how fragile I was with type 1 diabetes. And it showed me that it needed to be respected. So I was willing to do whatever it took. I was desperate. Right, and the big promises hooked me. You know, this low-fat, plant-based eating can reverse insulin resistance. Your blood sugars will be more predictable than ever. And here's the science that they were talking about. When we eat a lot of dietary fat, especially saturated fat from animal products, it can block insulin's signal at the muscle and liver cells. So think of insulin as the key and your cells as the lock, right? So excess fat gums up the lock, making it harder for glucose to enter. So lowering fat in our diet clears the lock so that insulin can work better, right? So I thought, if that's all it takes, maybe this is the way, right? But I later realized, after a huge epiphany, that vegan wasn't the only way. Turns out any diet works if your macros or your macronutrients are consistent, right? Now, if you're unfamiliar, all food that we consume is made up of 1 or 3 or 2 of the macronutrients, which are carbs, fats, and proteins. So everything you eat has at least one of those, and most things have all 3. So if you go to eat pasta has carbs, but there are also some trace amounts of protein, more if you have something like edamame pasta. A steak has proteins and fats. That's actually 0 carb, right? You think about something like an apple, it has carbs, very small trace amounts of protein. If you have something like beans, you got a good mixture of carbs and protein, right? So everything that you eat is made up of 1 or more macronutrients, the carbs, fats, and protein. Now, the real freedom comes from knowing your blood sugar formulas and building your own personalized macronutrient profile. So that's something that my team now sets up for every private client we take on. But back then, I was just chasing stability, right? And by the way, that desperation piece, the mental strain of constantly chasing the perfect diet or the diabetic diet, because everybody tells you there's a different diet for diabetes, right? Some people say keto, some people say vegan, others say paleo, others say it doesn't matter what you eat, just take insulin for it, right? And just smash your blood sugars. It's like blunt force insulin dosing. Chasing the perfect diet is exhausting because everyone's got a different opinion. And what I realized after going into one of these like cult-like diet followings, right, is that everybody believes that their diet is the one that works. It's not that their diet is the one and only diet. It's that that diet works for them because they're finally following rules and staying consistent with their macronutrient profiles. Now, as I discuss in my book, The Blood Sugar Freedom Formula, it's not just about which diet you pick, it's about staying consistent to your macronutrients. And that's important because as we switch the types of foods that we consume, you're actually changing your base level of insulin resistance versus insulin sensitivity. So when I switched to this super low-fat vegan diet, my insulin sensitivity went through the roof and I needed less insulin. Now, if the next day I switched over to keto or carnivore, my insulin resistance would peak and I would see completely different insulin ratios. It's not that one is better than the other. In fact, sometimes there are better diets for different types of people. So what works for me might not work for you, and it might go back and forth, right? What's most important is that you find one for you that is sustainable, right? So if you have somebody who's an animal rights activist being told they have to eat carnivore, it's not sustainable, right? They're gonna burn out, feel bad, and go back to whatever they were eating. Two, after it being sustainable, it has to match your goals. So if you have a goal of weight loss, there are some diets that work better for that than others, especially diets that are higher in protein, right? That's for a different video. If you wanna know about weight loss, comment weight loss, and we'll make sure we get you some trainings on that too. But the perfect diet doesn't exist, right? And it's something I dive into in my mental health video, is this idea that we have to find the perfect diet instead of personalizing things for us. So mental health, critical, but we'll dive into more on that later, right? That's just a whole topic by itself. It's often overlooked. I'm very passionate about this because personally, I've dealt with depression, suicidal ideation, panic attacks, PTSD. I've got a lot more than we have time for in this single video, but with it relating to diabetes, we also have things like diabetes distress and burnout, and it gets pretty dark pretty fast. So I'll link up something for you guys towards the end, all right? Now, back on set. I told you guys I was on a Hollywood set. You probably got curious about that, so we'll dive into that story next. Hour 4 out of a 15-hour shoot day. We're filming a music video in the mountains for the theme song of the movie 50 Shades of Grey. Right? The nearest hospital is 45 minutes away. And for those who are curious, it is the official song for the Hollywood movie, and I was actually playing the role of Mr. Grey. But it's YouTube safe, so don't worry, it's not anything sketchy, right? But you can actually search the song Heaven by Julia Michaels to see what I used to do for work. And let me know if you can spot my Dexcom, because my Dexcom actually did make it into the final cut of the official music video. And last I checked, I think it has like 120 million views on YouTube alone. So you can spot it was my Dexcom G5, so way back in the day, right? But back on set though, lunch hits my system fast. Right? There's no fats to slow down the digestion, so carbs hit my blood like a fire hose, right? But my insulin, I still dosed for my old ratio at that point. I was only like a week into this new diet. My insulin slammed into that spike like a freight train, and within minutes, I feel off, right? Shaky hands, nausea, tunnel vision. The crew calls the paramedics. Ambulance pulls up not too long after that. I'm chugging juice while someone shoves like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in my hand, right? And they knew what to do, thank God. Actually, one of them, he had a cousin who was type 1 and was like, you need a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But honestly, all I could think of in that moment was, how did I mess up so badly, so fast? Because this is only a couple months after I almost died in Paris, France. So I'm like, really? An urgent low almost killed me in France, and now I'm in Hollywood and another urgent low is on the way? Like, why do I suck at this? You know, like, why is diabetes so hard? And that was a moment where I kind of checked in with myself, where I was like, is it worth it? You know, this is hard and I hate this. And I knew that I was desperate for control. I needed to figure out what made blood sugars tick, right? So I called my endocrinologist, who disagreed with the diet initially when I was like, I'm going vegan. She was like, don't do that. But she still wanted the help. And then I also connected with a vegan type 1 diabetic who was also a PhD researcher. And together we rebuilt my dosing ratios from scratch. So new insulin to carb ratios, new basal rates, right? Insulin pump to handle the precision. It was actually the first time I had ever even considered an insulin pump because I hated the idea of wearing, we'll call them robot parts, right? I didn't want to be seen as different. I was very insecure about my diabetes at that time. And I finally agreed. I was like, you know what? Insecurity aside, I need to survive. I'm being told that the insulin pump will fix a lot of things. Spoiler alert, it helps, it doesn't fix things. You still have to be the one to fix things, which is why we have blood sugar formulas. Gives you certainty and calculations behind your numbers, right? Like it actually makes sense finally. But within a week, my CGM went from this roller coaster to stable enough blood sugars where like I finally had some breathing room. And I had my energy come back a little bit. And I will say the vegan diet specifically, I had a shift as well. I'll acknowledge that, but we'll talk about that in a second. My workout started to feel easier with blood sugars not wiping out my energy levels. And the data, so 70% less insulin, 3 times more sensitive to carbs. It was a leaner physique overall. I gained 2 pounds of muscle, certainly shedded some fat, right? And it also helps that I'm a certified master fitness trainer and nutritionist, right? Where I was able to build things intentionally and certainly support me in that fitness journey. But overall, my big realization, so here's what I learned. It wasn't magic because it was vegan, right? It worked because my macronutrients were consistent, because I ate low fat as a consistent basis. I ate higher carb as a consistent basis. I wasn't changing insulin ratios day to day. So because of that, my ratios being more consistent, I saw more consistent blood sugars. Diabetes loves consistency. Like if nothing else, if you just live the same day, eat the same foods, have the same workout, get to sleep at the same time every night, your blood sugars will be easier by default, right? Now, I can tell you from personal experience, after a while, your quality of life starts to suffer because you're like, why am I even doing this? Is this even worth it, right? Because nobody wants to get to the end of their life and realize they lived the exact same day for 50, 60, 70, 80 plus years and never had any fun, right? So it's not sustainable, as we talked about earlier. And once you know your blood sugar formulas, you can start to predict stability on any eating style. And this is what I was talking about. It gives you flexibility when you have a deeper understanding of control. If you're driving a car and the gas pedal makes you go, okay, that's gonna get you going in the right direction. But if you don't know how to shift, you're gonna be stuck in first gear. I drive a stick shift, all right? But you won't know how to go backwards because you haven't used reverse. You won't know how to put it in neutral or park. You won't know how to steer. So you do have a deeper understanding that allows you to change paths, right? Where you can go on the freeway or to the beach if you're driving a car, in this example again. So if you know on a deeper level how blood sugars work, you can switch, vegan on Monday, keto on Tuesday. I don't advise that, it's hard, but you can, right? So when I go out to a family barbecue, I know how to handle 3 burgers and ice cream because I have a blood sugar formula in place, right? So you can handle vegan or keto or paleo, whatever. It's really up to what your body functions best with, and then you build the formulas to support that diet, right? And admittedly, I just kind of mashed all the diets together. I'm like, every food sounds good. And so I eat healthy, but it's like, I don't limit myself, and I can still maintain nearly non-diabetic numbers because of your personalized macronutrient profile, right? So I identified what I want to eat, which for me wasn't vegan, but I still eat a lot of plants, right? A lot of veggies, a lot of fruits, but I also eat animal meat now. I also have complex carbs. I also have pancakes sometimes, right? But you identify your macronutrient profile and then you personalize it with blood sugar formulas. See how that works? And that becomes your roadmap. And we now build these for every private client we take on because that's the way that you establish freedom and flexibility of lifestyle, where you're not locked into this one specific diet. Don't have more than 20 carbs a day. And you're like, per day, I have 20 carbs in a snack. At least I do. And so, I have flexibility now as a result, even though my first dietitian ever told me I had to eat 45 carbs every meal. And I was like, okay, so just don't have more than 45 carbs? And she was like, no, 45. Like, you can't have 40, you can't have 50, it has to be exactly 45 carbs every meal. And ultimately, it's because diabetes loves consistency. She was trying to set me up for success. She imagined I wasn't going to look deeper into this, so I might as well just give him this cookie cutter cut and paste template. The problem is that life isn't like that, right? Life changes. Stuff comes up. You decide to try going vegan. And whenever you have these differences in life where you shift, your blood sugars are going to go absolutely bonkers unless you have a blood sugar formula in place. So that's why we start our private clients with a personalized macronutrient profile, because we're like, hey, what do you want to eat so it's sustainable? 2, what are your goals? Is it weight loss? Is it muscle gain? Is it performance athletics? Is it you traveling the world and enjoying cultural cuisine from everywhere? Like, what's the goal behind this? And then 3, let's set up the blood sugar formulas to support that, so that it supports you being in a sustainable diet that is matching up with your goals, and you love life now, right? And you can keep blood sugars level so that they're not causing damage. And that's a big part of the goal as well for most people, is I don't want diabetic complications, right? And some of our clients do end up eating plant-based. Some of our clients do end up eating keto, right? Some don't. Some prefer to eat everything, and that's fine. So ultimately, the goal with your type 1 diabetes should not be what are the rules that I should follow, but rather how do I make rules that support the outcomes that I'm after, right? And they all get predictable, stable blood sugars without giving up the foods they love. That's the point. So let's get into what you came here for, though. Probably the pros and cons of following a vegan diet, right? Low fat, whole food, plant-based diet, which is what I went through and stuck to for 3 months religiously. So the pros behind this diet, as you've heard me talk about a couple times, honestly, because I was so shocked by it, less insulin, like a lot less insulin. So if you're trying to save money on insulin, this might be one good option for you, but 70% less insulin for me when I calculated total daily dose, or TDD, and across basal and bolus insulin. Absolutely mind-blowing. So that showed me that it worked, and that really piqued my curiosity. Now, I also noticed more stability when going for higher carbs. I will not say more stability overall, because eating just carbs and no fat does mean that your blood sugars are a little bit more volatile, but they're much more responsive to insulin. So if I did mess up my pre-bolus timing, where you take your insulin early for the food you're about to eat, I could just go for a 5-minute walk and then comes right back down, right? Because I was very sensitive to insulin. So when I wanted to have higher carb meals, and we're talking like 150 carbs on my plate for one meal, right? I'm an athlete, so I eat a lot, right? But the possibility was endless, where I could have that many carbs and my blood sugars would stay in range. Like, that's wild. So I was more stability because I was more sensitive to insulin. I could handle more carbs, right? Now, I will also say I had higher energy, and I was like lighter on my feet. So what I mean by that is, if I ate a steak, I would feel satiated. I would feel full, but I'd be sitting on the couch like, yeah, that was a nice dinner. I enjoyed that, right? But I didn't want to move. When I was vegan, I would eat more food, like mountain of food on my plate. And then I'd be like, all right, if I wanted to, I could go for a jog right now, and I'd feel fine, no nausea, you know what I mean? So I was lighter on my feet in the sense that I never felt weighed down by the food, but I was also kind of hungry all the time. So interesting. For me, leaner physique as well. Now the cons, because everything that is good can also be bad. You've got perspective on both sides, right? So there were faster drops in my blood sugars without the fat. So there's increased volatility with less protein as well. So you still get protein as a vegan. You've got soy, you've got your beans and rice can form a complete protein. You've got tempeh. There's a whole bunch of different types, right? And you can get edamame pasta, which is high protein pasta. So there's lots of ways to get protein in, but overall it was still less protein than I was used to consuming, because I used to consume, let's say, beans, which have protein, and chicken. So it's like I'd have both. So with less fat, less protein, I did notice that my blood sugars would drop a bit faster when they dropped. So if I would go out for a jog, they'd crash, right? So I just had to be aware of that and plan ahead. I did notice a steeper learning curve for dosing. I mentioned we were out in the mountains filming that music video for Hollywood, and I crashed out of nowhere because my insulin to carb ratio had changed in days, where it's like, whoa, what previously worked is not working anymore. This is nuts. Another con for me personally is more meal prep. So I wanted to do it right. I didn't just eat vegan and eat like potato chips. I'm like, hey, it's vegan. You know, I actually had a friend in college who dated this girl who was hardcore vegan, like animal rights activist and everything, which more power to her. It's great. She's passionate about it. But he dated her and she was like, we can't date unless you're vegan. He was like, dang, I kind of like you, so okay, I'll do it. And every night, it was in our fraternity house. I was in a Christian fraternity in college. Every night, his dinner would be like potato chips and Oreos. And we're like, you're eating less healthy as a result of it. This is ridiculous. Anyways, it was more meal prep because for me, I wanted to do it right. So we were making full spreads of like cooked veggies, stuff that would take like an hour to prepare, but it was delicious. Now, I will say, if you try to do this, do it with a doctor or find a team that can help you. All right, like sensitivity changes this fast can be dangerous if you're not adjusting in real time. So the experience that I had, I didn't end up going to the hospital, but they called an ambulance, you guys. Like, first of all, it was embarrassing. You know, especially because we live with an invisible illness. It's like, call an ambulance, and they're like, are you bleeding? And I'm like, no. My blood sugar is gonna be low. Is it low right now? No. You know, I'm like, it's double arrows down at 90, but no. You know, it's just like, oh, man. Invisible illness is nuts. So, being cautious because it is something that can change pretty rapidly. It can be dangerous if you're making radical shifts in your life and you're not prepared with an expert, a medical team, a coach, someone who knows what they're doing to manipulate these outcomes, to change insulin doses as you go so it's not dangerous learning, right? And learning in response to mistakes. You're learning ahead of the mistakes. I will say going vegan as a T1D did teach me some stuff. So one, it taught me the diet isn't magic. The macros are, the macronutrients, right? So when I switched to high carb, low fat, it's not that being vegan is why I could eat higher carb. It's that lower fat made me more insulin sensitive, which made it easier to sustain a higher carb diet without massive spikes and drops, right? That doesn't mean it's the right one though. Again, I chose to leave that diet after 3 months of experimentation because it wasn't sustainable for me. And this is why we work with our clients to get a personalized macronutrient profile based on their blood sugar formulas. We don't tell anyone how to eat. We say, hey, here's a couple of templates that people like, but make it yourself. Make it your own so that we can make sure this is sustainable, right? And then we can build the formulas around what you've decided. If you want to eat out more, great. Here's the template, right? And let's build a blood sugar formula to support that. Because the real goal, it's not to be vegan. Well, for some people it is. And if it is, great, you found your macronutrient profile, right? Let's build a strategy around it. But for most people, the real goal isn't to be vegan or to be keto or any label, right? It's eating your way with freedom without fear of crashes. In fact, in the comments, let me know if you've ever had a drop that you didn't see coming. Like my experience in the mountains, or one that caught you off guard, right? Like me being in the mountains 45 minutes away from the nearest hospital, and I'm just like panicking, holding on for dear life. Don't die, Let me know if I'm the only one. And if you ever chased the perfect diet out of desperation, or have been told that there's one perfect diet, whether it's by some guru writing a book, or if it's your medical team, someone with outdated information, because it is outdated. We used to think there was one perfect diet, and there was one diet that worked best if you were going to be restrictive and not pay attention to your blood sugars. It was before CGMs. That was the one diet that worked. But if you've been told that there is to this day still a perfect diet, and you've tried to follow that out of desperation, my mental health video is exactly what I wish I'd seen, and you can watch it next if you're looking for support in that realm. Now, of course, if you want my team to build out your perfect blood sugar and meal profile, vegan or not, check the link in the description. I think you'll find it helpful. Now, overall, the vegan diet can be good, can be bad, totally depends on the person. And as everything that I tell you will be kind of incorporated into this, is that you should personalize your blood sugar formulas. You should personalize your experiences, your plans, your goals. Do not let anybody else tell you what your goal should or should not be. I hear too many doctors tell their patients, your goal should be an A1C of a 7 and time in range of 70%. It's a terrible goal for most people, right? Now, if your A1C is at a 15, sure, let's 7 is a very reasonable milestone. But if you're sitting at a 7.5, 8, or maybe even like a 6.9, and you're like, I made it. Don't let the low standards of the medical system hold you back. I've been sitting above a 90% time in range for over 5.5 years straight. A1C at or below a 6 while living my best life and experimenting, going vegan, right? Becoming an Ironman, becoming a dad. It's possible to live your best life and to be in control while holding yourself to a higher standard. So again, if you'd like some support in that, check the link. We've got something special for you. I hope you find it helpful. We'll see you in the next video and keep up the fight.